Good morning, everyone. I am Irene M. Del Monte, and I'll be reporting on the quality assurance in Philippine higher education institutions. So, quality assurance, as defined in the CHED Memorandum Order number 46 series of 2012, section 6, it is the alignment and consistency of the learning environment with the institution's mission, vision, and goals demonstrated by exceptional learning and service outcomes and the development of culture of quality. It is generally defined as part also of the overall management function that determines and implements the quality policy. So, as we all know, the Commission on Higher Education is the government agency charged with the responsibility of ensuring that programs and institutions in the higher education sector are of quality. So, all higher education institutions follow the quality standards of CHED, and it is CHED that ensures that HEI complies with these standards in their operations and program offerings. Moreover, CHED also performs regulatory functions and undertakes developmental programs. So let's now proceed to the process flow on the quality assurance in higher education. So, at the CHED Central Office, the Office of Programs and Standards Development, or the OPSD, is primarily responsible for quality assurance at the program level, while the Office of Institutional Quality Assurance and Governance is concerned with quality assurance at the institutional level. At the regional level, regional offices, or the CHEDRAs, serve as the Commission's frontline offices, which are tasked to enforce its various policies, standards, and guidelines and implement its programs and projects, as well as conduct regular monitoring and evaluation of HEIs in their program offerings. So, let's have the OPSD. Through the technical panels and technical committees, formulates the policies, standards, and guidelines for various degree programs that serve as guides for HEIs in ensuring compliance with the CHED prescribed minimum requirements for offering higher education programs. On the other hand, the OIQAG has its task force on quality assurance and various technical working groups which provide technical assistance in the formulation of policies and guidelines for the establishment and operation of HEIs and classification of HEIs. While CHADROS, through their regional quality assessment teams, or RQATs, composed of duly designated program experts in the region who are not organic CHED staff, undertake the compulsory assessment and program approval of application for permit or recognition of HEIs for their program offerings at the undergraduate level. So let's now proceed to the establishment of HEIs. The establishment of state universities and colleges and the conversion of state colleges into state universities are vested in the Philippine Congress. The laws promulgated in the last 5 years for such SUCs stipulate that these institutions meet CHED requirements for university status, while local universities and colleges, which are created to address local needs, are established by local government units with authorization from CHED. And private HEIs are incorporated either as non-stock, non-profit, or stock. So, for profit corporations, in accordance with the Corporation Code of Philippines and Education Act of 1982 as amended by RA 7798, and register with the Securities and Exchange Commission with favorable endorsement from CHED. So the approval programs is listed as one of the functions of CHED in RA 7722, specifically stated in sections 8D and 8E of the law. CHED is the only QA agency responsible for managing program approval processes and monitoring compliance with the HEIs with the existing minimum standards. Alright, so let's now proceed to the process flow of the program approval for private higher education institutions. So let's now proceed to the process flow of the program approval for private higher education institutions. Private HEIs submit their application to offer an undergraduate program to the CHEDRO for evaluation. If deemed complete, the CHEDRO will send a regional quality assessment team or the RQAT for on-site evaluation of the HEI. Then the RQAT determines the compliance of the HEI with the minimum requirements pertaining to the degree program applied for. Then the RQAT's recommendation will be submitted to the CHEDRO. So the RQAT's evaluation will be submitted to the CHEDRO, which in turn issues the appropriate certificate of government authorization based on the RQAT's favorable recommendation. So the HEIs apply in 3 phases before the programs are fully approved. The first phase is the application of the initial permit to offer a program for the first and second year of operations. This means that the HEI must comply with the minimum requirements pertaining to the first 2 years of a program's operation. The second phase of application is for the renewal of the permit for the third year of operation. And the third and final phase is the application for government recognition that the HEI has fully complied with the minimum requirements for the first to fourth years of operations. So for SUCs and LUCs, approval of their academic programs is coursed through their governing boards following the charters ordinance that created them. Prior to 2010, public HEI subjected their new programs to the CHED process of approval on voluntary basis. However, since then, there has been a marked increase in applications of SUCs and LUCs for certificates of program compliance after CHED explained to their respective governing boards that CHED will only recognize existing public HEI programs that have gone through the Commission's process of approving programs. Except for the University of the Philippines, which of course is the country's national university, the prior approval of the CHEDRA for undergraduate programs of SUCs and OPSD for their graduate programs has become a prerequisite for the SUC governing board's approval of new programs. So for special program approval, such as programs in medicine, nursing, dentistry, maritime education, and graduate education programs without PSGs, both private and public HEIs apply at the CHEDRA, and CHEDRA endorses the application to the OPS. The OPSD processes the program approval or authority for these particular programs to operate. So let's now proceed to the approval of providers. So CHED, specifically the CHEDRAS, is the only body that approves the establishment of private HEIs. The key functions of CHED are found in sections 8, D, and E of RA 7722. Congress approves the establishment of SUCs. However, CHED provides its review and position on such establishment prior to the enabling legislation. For LUCs, it is the local government units that approve the establishment of providers. So, according to Republic Act 7160 or the Local Government Code of 1991, municipalities, cities, provinces, through their respective local governing councils, can establish schools that offer post-secondary programs because these are the units that can address the particular needs of their immediate communities. So, let's now proceed to the approval process for private HEIs. So, approval process for private HEIs, the institution submits its application to CHEDRA to be recognized as an HEI and simultaneously to offer or operate a degree program. CHEDRA then conducts document analysis and site visit of the facilities, after which CHEDRA determines the compliance with the set of criteria as per CHED Memorandum Order Number 40 Series of 2008 Manual of Regulations for Private Higher Education, or MORFE, which is the CHEDRA then, after that, the CHEDRA checks the completeness and validity of the data submitted, after which the CHEDRA endorses to OIQAG for evaluation. So OIQAG evaluates the application and presents the findings to TWG. And TWG deliberates on the findings and makes recommendations on the classification and forward it to the CEB. Then the CEB makes the final decision on the classification of the HEI, and that's the end of the process. So let's now proceed to the approval process for SUCs. So a House bill is filed at the lower house of Congress or House of Representatives for establishing an SUC or converting a state college into a state university. So CHED determines compliance of the institution and submits compliance reports and its position on the eligibility of the HEI to the Committee on Higher and Technical Education of the lower house. And then, of the lower house, which subsequently makes the decision to proceed with the process of passing the bill in the lower house and file the bill if passed to the upper house of Congress. So once passed, the bill is transformed. Once passed, the bill is transformed into the law, which is referred to once passed. Once passed, the bill is transformed into a law, which is now referred to as Republic Act, and for signature of the President of the Philippines. And already so once passed, the bill is transformed into a law and is now forwarded to, once passed, the bill is now transformed into a law, which referred to us as a Republic Act, and this will be forwarded to the President of the Philippines for signature. So that's the end of the process. Then, so let's now move on to the approval process for LUCs. So, pursuant to CHED Memorandum Order Number 32 Series of 2006, LGUs establishing new LUCs must work closely with CHEDRAS. So, they have to submit the required documents to CHEDRAS, and CHEDRAS conduct the initial evaluation and informs the LGU Governing Council of their findings. So, it is the LGU Governing Councils that will decide whether they will establish the LUCs or not. However, once they have decided, it is the LGU Governing Councils that will decide whether they will establish the LUCs or not. So, if the recommendation of the CHEDRA is to revise the application, then the LGU has to revise it and submit it again to the CHEDRA. But once it's already approved, then it has to undergo the evaluation process for program approval. So for existing LUCs, applications are submitted to OIQAG through the CHEDRAS to be recognized as higher education institutions. So the CHEDRAS submit the initial evaluation report to OIQAG. Then conducts on-site, the OIQAG conducts on-site evaluation and its findings are presented to the technical working group, And the technical working group discusses findings and make recommendations and will be forwarded to the CEB, and the CEB now makes the final decision, and that's the end of the process. Okay, so let's now proceed to the monitoring of providers. So it is the function of CHEDROS to monitor the quality and currency of programs. There are instances that Professional Regulation Commission or PRC would shed also conduct monitoring of programs that have licensure examinations. This monitoring is only conducted when the need arises. In relation to monitoring of providers, all public and private HEIs are required to submit statistical data to CHED. So CHEDRAs are expected to monitor the HEIs under their jurisdiction and take follow-up actions. Monitoring of HEIs is usually program-based and done yearly. Let us now proceed to the voluntary assessment of quality. So, to encourage the continuous improvement in the quality of program implementation and operations of public and private HEIs, CHED implements development programs in the form of providing support, incentives, grants, awards, or recognition to selected and deserving programs of HEIs. And these assessments are voluntary in nature. So the first one here is Program Level Voluntary QA, or the OPSD. So CHED through OPSD identifies centers of excellence and centers of developments in various disciplines in recognition of exemplary performance of HEIs in the areas of instruction, research, and extension, and which are expected to serve as potential catalysts in specific program areas needed to develop a world-class scholarship and nation building. We also have here for the institutional level, or the OIQAG. So CHED through OIQAG is implementing a typology-based quality assurance system by classifying all HEIs based on their functional differentiation vis-a-vis their service to the nation as reflected on their vision and mission. So, to apply for vertical classification or horizontal classification, in compliance with CHED Memorandum Order Number 46 Series of 2012, the HEIs submit the necessary documents to CHEDRA. So it should be noted that horizontal and vertical classification of private HEIs is currently on application basis and is voluntary in nature. So, under the horizontal typology, the applicant HEI shall be evaluated based on the CHED criteria and guidelines, and then may be either typed as professional institute, college, or university. While on the vertical typology, the applicant HEI shall be evaluated based on the CHED criteria and guidelines, and then may be granted either autonomous or deregulated status. So, private and public HEIs are encouraged by CHED to undergo institutional sustainability. For both private and public HEIs, CHED encouraged them to undergo Institutional Sustainability Assessment, or ISA, which is also voluntary in nature and is conducted at no cost to the HEI. So the ISA framework aims to enhance or develop the internal quality assurance management systems of HEIs. HEIs are evaluated in 5 key result areas, which are governance and management, quality of teaching and learning, quality of professional exposure, research and creative work, support for students, and relations with the community. So for HEIs that have successfully undergone ISA, the ISA score will form part of the HEI's scores toward their application for autonomous or deregulated status. So let's now proceed to the SUC leveling. CHED evaluates the state universities and colleges to determine the level of the institutions. SUC leveling refers to the vertical classification system for SUCs and is similar to the process of determining autonomous or deregulated status in private HEIs. SUC leveling is governed by the Joint Circular of CHED and the Department of Budget and Management. The SUC accomplishes the leveling instrument under oath. So, the completed instrument is submitted with the complete supporting documents to the CHEDRA within 30 working days upon the issuance of the joint circular. So, the Regional Evaluation Committee or REC is convened composed of the regional directors of CHED, DBM, and the authorized representative of the Philippine Association of State Universities and Colleges or PASUC. So the CHED regional director designates appropriate CHED staff as secretariat, which undertakes the initial evaluation of the SUCs. So the REC or REC has the following tasks: collect and validate data and supporting documents submitted by the SUCs, followed by conducting evaluation of SUCs in the region based on issued criteria and guidelines. The third is coordinate and work with the task force on SUC leveling. And the last one is, in coordination with the task force, REC organizes consultation meetings with the SUCs in their respective regions. After which, the results of the REC evaluation are forwarded to the task force on SUC leveling through OIQAG for consolidation, validation, and endorsement to the CHED's CEB. So, deliberation and recommendation will be done by the CEB, after which it will be forwarded to the National Evaluation Committee. So the NEC reviews and confirms the levels of the SUCs. The results are disseminated through CHED Memorandum Order for information and guidance of all concerned. So SUC leveling results are approved for dissemination and implementation for the purpose of establishing one of the bases for determining the classification and salary grade of the SUC president and the allowable number of vice presidents to be designated. So let's now proceed to the internal quality assurance. According to Article 2, Section 8 of CHED's Memorandum number 46, series of 2012, which is on policy standard to enhance quality assurance in Philippine higher education through outcomes-based and typology-based QA, states that an internal QA system begins with the HEI's identity and enters a quality cycle of planning, implementation, review, and enhancement. So, to operationalize the transition of institutions to outcome-based education and institutionalize quality assurance in the institutions at the program level, CHED issued CHED Administrative Order Number 1, Series of 2014. This administrative order provides guidance to HEIs in their transition to outcome-based education as advocated in CHED Memorandum Order Number 46, Series of 2012. The Continuous Quality Improvement Program recognizes that while the standards are set at the policy level, it does not instantly end in the perfect state for all the HEIs. Hence, the need to help the HEIs adapt to its changing environment transition through the Plan, Do, Check, Act quality. The gap between the actual measure and targets of the program outcomes serve as the basis for program evaluation and intervention. The gap between the actual measure and targets of the program serve the gap between the actual measure and targets of the program outcomes serves as the basis for program evaluation and interventions for continuous quality improvement. for continuous quality improvement of the program which is undertaken within the institution. So, CHED, through its revised PSGs, determined that even at the department level, there are systems in place to ensure compliance with the minimum standards and achievement of program outcomes. So, along with the CMO number 46 series of 2012, CHED also issued an implementation handbook for OBE, or the outcome-based education, and sustain institutional sustainability assessment to be used as a guide and reference by the institutions to transition and strengthen its internal quality assurance system. The Office of Institutional Quality Assurance and Governance also implements the institutional assessment ESA of HEIs. The ESA framework aims to enhance or develop the IQA of HEIs as mentioned earlier. So, moreover, CHED also recognizes the role of ISO 9001. Moreover, CHED recognizes the role of ISO 9001 audits in helping HEIs develop their quality management systems in place, but urges ISO providers to adapt their audits to the nuances of higher education systems so as to have greater impact on the quality of educational institutions. So for the conclusion, as we all know, the economic success of the states is directly determined by the quality of their education system. So, the quality of education in the Philippines must always be ensured by all the HEIs in the country to produce graduates with high levels of skills that are aligned not only with the national standards but also of international standards. So let me end my presentation with this quote from Ron Lewis. He said, ensuring quality higher education is one of the most important things that we can do for future generations. Thank you very much and good morning.